Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everybody to the July 12th, 2023 Board of Appeals meeting for the City of Oklahoma City. Can we have a roll call, please? Here.
Hadley,
Here.
Jim McWhirter, Ron Roque, here. Tommy Willis,
Here.
and Patrice Zimmerman.
Here.
We're all here.
Yeah,
We have a
are
quorum.
here. Yes.
So the first thing on our agenda is the motion to elect the board chair. Do we have any nominations?
I nominate Kyle Lombardo.
And Ron made the nomination?
Ron Roque.
You have a second?
We have a second?
I'll second the nomination.
Oh,
It's Tommy Willis.
okay.
We have a vote. Will you call the roll for the vote?
All right. Ann Weber? Aye. Well, did we decide to use vote on it?
Aye.
No? Aye, okay. Tricia Hadley?
Aye.
Jim McWhirter? Ron Roque?
Yes.
Tommy Willis?
Yes.
And Patrice Zimmerman.
Yes.
Okay. The vote passes.
So the vote passes.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you guys again. Really looking forward to the next year. The next item on the agenda is the motion to elect the board vice chair. I think I can make a motion on this, is that correct?
I believe so.
I'll nominate Tommy Willis.
Second.
That was Jim.
Jim?
So we have a motion and a second. Would you like to take the vote?
Okay. Ann Weber?
Aye.
Kyle Lombardo?
Aye.
Tricia Hadley?
Aye.
Jim McWhirter?
Yes.
Ron Roque?
Aye.
Tommy Willis?
Aye.
And Patrice Zimmerman.
Aye.
Okay, so it passes unanimously.
Are you happy to be elected? Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the February 8th, 2023 meeting. Has everybody, I assume everybody's gotten a copy of the minutes and had a chance to read them? Do we have any questions or comments? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Motion to approve.
A second?
I'll second.
So is Jim and Ron.
Okay. All right. Ann Weber?
Aye.
Kyle Lombardo?
Aye.
Tricia Hadley?
Aye.
Jim McWhirter?
Yes.
Ron Roque?
Aye.
Tommy Willis?
Aye.
And Patrice Zimmerman.
Aye.
All right. The vote passes.
So we'll move on to the cases. Our first case today is case number BOAB 2023-00001, an appeal of Mike Mullins. Sam Grisham will be the representing him today. From a decision of the code official for noncompliance with Chapter 7, Section 705.5 of the International Building Code 2015 is adopted by the City of Oklahoma City to the requirement for fire separation distance and rated exterior walls for 200 Northeast 34th Street. Sam, would you mind stating your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Sam Gresham, 400 Northwest 23rd. I'm here to represent the owner and the contractor on this project.
Excuse me, Sam, before you go on, can I get the staff analysis? I'm sorry.
Okay. So the staff analysis, the applicant's requested variance pertains to the requirement of having a 2-hour rated exterior wall without openings, correct? Yes. Or otherwise to provide the required 10 feet of fire separation distance as the building code requires. This property line in question is adjacent to an easement owned and operated by the railroad, and of course it may be highly unlikely that a neighboring structure is ever built. But this is, of course, never a guarantee that we can agree to.
Thank you. Sam, go ahead.
This has been granted in the past on other projects, and I've spoken with Mike Wilson about this. There's about 40 feet between an adjacent building to east and this building, of course, occupied by a right-of-way. It's unlikely someone could buy that. Maybe they could, and that's really been I guess the rationale that Scott presents. That could be built on, and someone could build right up against our building, and we would require then, the fire-rated exterior wall. If we were against an easement, as we are on the west side of the building, we'd have, no, I'm sorry, west side. I'm turning this around. Anyway, it's on the south side of the building. The north side of the building is against the right-of-way, and we have no requirement for fire ratings on that side. Obviously, it's a city-owned right-of-way. We're asking for a variance based on the fact that the likelihood of that being a useful construction site or ever being available as a construction site, given that it is private property is understandable, but it is a railroad right-of-way, and those tend to exist unchanged for hundreds of years, if not forever. I know there's no guarantee, but we're seeking some relief there. So,
Mike, do you have anything you'd like to add? Mike Wilson.
No, the only thing I was questioning, I guess, was whether or not there was going to be any openings on that side, because there's like a loading dock shown with steps, but appears on the elevation that there isn't an opening on that side. So I just had the question of whether or not that included an opening on that wall. But the open space, like you say, will generally not be built on for the railroad. Their tracks are there that serve other properties. So I don't think there's any risk of a structure being built.
there are no openings. That was an Alta survey that was used for our site plan and for this exhibit, and it showed dockside. That used to be it is a rail spur, and that was how that original building was used. Currently, there's a slab there, that's all. And we're putting a new building on top of the existing slab. It's a glamorous project, I'm telling you. We're really going to make portfolio benefit anyway.
So Sam, there are no openings in the wall?
There are no openings on that wall.
The appeal is to reduce the rating for the entire wall?
We'd like to reduce the rating for the entire wall, as it would be on the north side against the right-of-way.
Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I have a question. Maybe I wasn't following what you were just talking about, but so the building is right up on the property line? Is that?
Yes.
Yeah, we're talking
Okay.
about the side that's on the railroad.
Right. And so that's I was trying to figure out, there's a dash line and then there's so there's concrete pads that are in the railroad right away. Are those part of the
Are those,
exits for the building?
Those will be gone. Those aren't actually on this property. They're on the railroad property.
Right.
And those are dock-high landings that were apparently used to unload rail cars at some point.
So they'll be gone.
They'll be
when
gone,
you
or
build
they'll.
the new
but
structure.
They don't. You can see the property line. It's in blue in this particular Alta survey. That property line is right against the building on that south side, and those docks are actually on the railroad right away. So removing them would be probably useful to get them out of the way, if that made any sense to them. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. But you don't have any openings in that wall?
No other access. It's
Emergency
dock high.
access.
It's 4 feet high, the whole slab.
Okay.
So.
All right. Thank you.
any other questions?
I'd kind of like to understand the difference between what you're asking for and the rating two. What's the difference in those two buildings?
The fire rating, as opposed to no fire rating, is 6 sheets of sheetrock, 3 outside, 3 inside. It has to be rated 2 hours from the inside out and from the outside in. So it's quite a pile of drywall material
Okay,
on a side that adjacent to what I guess would never become a building, in my opinion.
okay.
And I think it's already been pointed out, we have approved a number of cases in the past for this same right-of-way, maybe not this exact same area, but for the same right-of-way. We've always had a caveat, Sam, in the appeals to bring it up to code should that property ever be sold and something built adjacent to that property line. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't that what we've done in the past, Scott?
Yeah.
So,
Agreed, yes.
any more questions?
I'm good.
I'll take a motion.
Okay, I would make a motion to approve with the caveat of, if anything's ever built, what Kyle just said, you can put that wording in there, Scott, and also that you will never make an opening in that wall for a door, a window, or anything.
Agreed. It's
We have-
not their property. They don't own it. So
Right.
An opening would be somewhat of a mistake. Window maybe, I don't know, but Scott will do it.
Yeah, we'll put the comment on there for sure.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
It's Jim and Ron.
Okay. All right, we'll take a vote. Ann Weber,
Aye.
Kyle Lombardo,
Aye.
Tricia Hatley,
Aye.
Jim McWhirter,
Yes.
Ron Roque,
Aye.
Tommy Willis,
Aye.
and Patrice Zimmerman.
Aye.
All right, motion passes.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Kyle.
So this next case is case number BOAB 2023-00002. The appeal of Isaac Hines, representing Westgate Park Residential LLC, from a decision of the code official for noncompliance with Chapter 29, Table 2902.1 of the International Building Code 2015 as adopted by the City of Oklahoma City, pertaining to the requirement for restroom fixtures for 10333 West Reno Avenue. I assume you're representing the applicant?
Yes, sir. My name is Isaac Hines, 500 North Broadway, Suite 100.
Thank you. Would you care, before I need to get a staff analysis again. I'm sorry, Isaac.
No worries, we're good.
Sure. Okay, so the applicant's requested variance pertains to the code official's interpretation and requirement for additional restroom fixtures per IBC Table 2902.1. Of course, for those who may not know, this table, lists all sorts of uses that require a certain number of toilets, restrooms, things like that for each one. So, apartments are classified as an R2 use, and this is an apartment complex, correct?
Yes, sir.
And the clubhouse has an outdoor pool and seating area, which we've deemed to be classified as a mix of B for the clubhouse, but also A3, part of the clubhouse, and then this outdoor pool assembly area. So, whereas IBC Chapter 29 does not specifically reference outdoor pool areas under the Table 2902.1, it is the staff's interpretation that restrooms would be required as an A3 use, requiring one fixture per 125 occupants for men and one fixture per 65 occupants for women, based on the language of 2902.1, which states that a minimum number of fixtures, plumbing fixtures, shall be provided in the minimum number shown in the table based on the actual use of the building or space. Uses not shown in the table should be considered individually by the code official. The number of occupants shall be determined by this code. Subnote D listed under this table, in conjunction with groups A1, A2, A3 uses, also adds that the occupant load for seasonal outdoor seating in entertainment areas shall be included when determining the minimum number of facilities required. We typically see this with restaurant, outdoor seating, places like that as well. Anyway, continuing on, the 2015 IBC Code commentary also elaborates on this sentence by stating the following, though of course it must be noted that the code commentary is not formally adopted. But it says, the intent of table note D concerning outdoor seating and entertainment areas is to require that outdoor patios, decks, balconies, beer gardens, and similar areas, whether those areas have seating or not, be included when calculating the number of plumbing fixtures. While seating does provide a definitive occupant load for these types of areas, there are many situations where these areas are not provided with seating in order to accommodate as many customers as possible. Therefore, the occupant load should be based on standing space density. This occupant load number must be applied to the ratios for the appropriate use description in row, of the table, of course. For example, a restaurant has fixed seating area with fixed booths and an outdoor entertainment area that has no seating or tables. The fixed seating area load is simply a count of the number of seats in accordance with section 1004.7, whereas the restaurant fixture ratios are then applied to this load to determine the number of plumbing fixtures for the fixed seating area. The outdoor area requires a different approach, as it is a standing space area, not with fixed seating. The occupant load is calculated from the area using this table 1004.1.2. Even though the building is a restaurant, this outdoor entertainment area might not be used, not as a restaurant, but as a nightclub, dance floor, etc. Therefore, the fixture ratios under table row 2 of table 29.2.1 are applied to the standing occupant load. Using row 3 fixture ratios for this area would be inappropriate. The use of proper occupant loads and use ratios will ensure that an adequate number of plumbing fixtures are provided where the occupant load is substantially increased by the addition of outdoor seating or standing areas. Now, of course, the example in that was the restaurant, uses it a similar situation as what we've got here. The code official's interpretation is that the language of section 2902.3.3 also plays a role in this decision by stating the following. Location of toilet facilities in occupancies other than malls. It says, in occupancies other than covered and open mall buildings, the required public and employee toilet facilities shall be located not more than 1 story above or below the space required to be provided with toilet facilities. And the path of travel to such facilities shall not exceed a distance of 500 feet, linear feet, which I believe the apartment complex is obviously much larger than 500 feet.
I have the math.
Radius, I would imagine, right? Yeah. So, in summary, it is the interpretation of the code official that additional fixtures will be required for the outdoor assembly areas per section 2902.1 and subnote D under the table 2902.1. It is then also interpreted that such fixtures must be provided within the 500-foot travel distance as described under section 2902.3.2, which would partially negate the applicant's argument that the occupants of the pool will have access to their own dwelling unit restrooms. While we understand that many or even most of the pool's users may also reside on the premises, it cannot be a guarantee that others would not join them for pool parties, birthdays, or other events as commonly observed. The applicant's argument for the use of language stated in the International Swimming Pool and Spa Code, the ISPSC, and state regulations is noted. However, neither document, of course, has been adopted by the City of Oklahoma City, and the use of the IBC as interpreted will also trump state regulation, as we are permitted to be more restrictive than state law otherwise might require. In conclusion, the code official accepts the possibility for the use of some nearby unit restrooms to meet such requirements, but we do not believe this accounts for all of those required. We believe that the intent of the code, while not specifically stated, would not aim for residents to traverse more than 500 feet to a restroom while also contending with their current state of having recently exited a pool.
You might want to shorten the staff response.
Yeah. This one was a doozy.
And Isaac, would you mind restating your name and address?
My name is Isaac Hines, 500 North Broadway, Suite 100.
And you're representing the...
I'm representing the owner, yes, sir.
Okay. Would you tell us a little bit about your case, please?
Absolutely. I appreciate your time, and to that comment, I'll try and keep it brief. So Scott and I had detailed discussions about this, and the code does specifically leave this particular, they don't address pools like this specifically. They say it's up to the jurisdiction. So there is leeway. Me checking the ISPC, the International Pool and Spa Code, that's a lot, and the county health department were just to see if they require it also, just to cross-check and make sure I'm not violating health, safety, welfare. That's my #1 job. None of them require it. So as far as 2902 and the plumbing count, it says that it is at the discretion of the AHJ. So what I'm asking for is this to not be classified to that higher seasonal outdoor area because this is a private apartment. Every tenant there will have the ability to use the pool. The public is not allowed, and I have confirmed with the owner that they do not rent out this pool for parties, events, things of that nature. So the only people using this are the people that already live there. As for the comment about having restrooms within 500 feet, as you can see up here on the plan, the clubhouse, which is only open to the tenants and people, prospective tenants, has 6 fixtures in it, so you are within 80 feet of a restroom. Further, more than that, 78% of our units are within 500 feet, but they're not walking back to their place to use the restroom. They're going to use the clubhouse, six restrooms provided. The building 13, 14, and 15 are the only ones that don't fall within 500 feet. Every other building does, but that's irrelevant because there are fixtures in the permitted clubhouse. So because of all of that, I guess what I'm asking is it's not be bumped up to a higher tier because the expectation of large crowds doesn't exist. The pool can't be rented out. We already provide 6 fixtures in the clubhouse for immediate close proximity access, and it's a private pool. So I guess it's kind of a common sense approach that Scott and I chatted about, and it's one of those things that requires this variance.
Would you mind rolling to the plan one more time, please?
So the 6 fixtures are right there on the left side.
Right. Can you briefly explain which are the assembly areas in this plan?
Which of the what?
The assembly areas inside the plan, the building itself?
The bottom right empty box is a room that people can rent if they want to have a birthday party or something in there. The main central corridor is just this grand hall that people come in, and there'll be some couches and some sofas if somebody wants to sit inside where it's cold while their kids swimming. And then the room to the north is a small workout facility with 10, 12 machines, nothing crazy. Those are the assembly areas. Everything else is office or business.
Is it a dining, looks like it comes off of a kitchen or something?
No, it is not. That is all the staff offices. So the 3 offices to the back are staff offices. You have an IT, and that's their break room. It's not a kitchen. And so if you were going to lease an apartment, you would come in the main entry and then turn into that smaller lobby for the staff.
Okay.
So did you do a full calculation based on the letter of the code?
Right here.
And how many fixtures did you come up with on that?
So with it calculated the way I calculated it, including the hashing the area as a different assembly than what was interpreted by the city, that is sufficient, and it's above by about half a fixture.
Okay. And Scott, the main difference was you were looking at 3.5 square feet versus, or 3 square feet versus 7.5. Is that, you were looking at standing room for one of the spaces, is that?
Well, I mean, so the code requires an occupant load for standing room only to be measured at 7 square feet per individual. So for the outdoor areas that that you might consider standing room, that occupant load can get pretty high pretty quick.
Right.
It would require me to add an additional 6 to 8 fixtures, which
Right.
is north of a $250,000 add for a private pool.
Do you have a capacity, pool capacity? What is it?
35 occupants.
So anything above 35 occupants shouldn't be in there.
That's just the actual pool itself. I've calculated the area around that as well. I'm trying to find that number where it's written on here. That number's not written on here, but I can get that for you. But it was factored in.
Okay. And then do you have a capacity for the building itself?
Individually broken up, yes. The total capacity is 319 occupants. And so the anticipation as well, as like I said, is that it's not, this building is for the tenants as well. So it's not a building that has an ancillary use. There is crossover.
Okay.
How many units in the overall development?
444.
So Scott, the main issue is the standing room only in the outdoor area to the right of the, to the left of the waiting pool, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, at least the city's main argument is whether or not restroom fixtures would be required for the outdoor area to begin with.
And to Scott's
Our
point,
stance is yes.
yeah, 2902 is right, that if this weren't a private apartment, the giant sidewalk you see up there, you could set that up and stage that with tables and chairs and have a wedding. And for the example that the commentary gave about a restaurant, you could have seasonal outdoor seating. This isn't going to change because it's private.
But
That's-
even at outdoor seating, you wouldn't be at 7 square feet, you know? You'd be-
Sorry, say that again?
Even at outdoor seating wouldn't be at 7 square foot per person,
Correct.
it'd be at 15.
Yeah,
And at 15, you think you're close?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, and it is 1 per 50 square feet around the pool deck itself.
Right.
If I recall. So,
That's actually a higher
Yeah.
account, but since, like it said, that subnote D says it's at the discretion of AHJ, when we got the initial comments back, it was interpreted to be the most restrictive assembly category, and we don't feel that that's ever going to happen.
What are the clubhouse hours compared to the pool hours?
That is a question that I don't know the answer to. This is Mr. Eric Gummerson, he's the owner.
yeah, please come to the mic if you can.
Well, so the clubhouse will be open for leasing probably from like 9 to 5-ish, Monday through Friday, and then half a day Saturday. Otherwise, it would be closed, and then there's 24-hour fitness facility for the residents only. The pool, my guess, closes at dark. Or all of our previous developments, we close the pool at dark, open at 10, 11 o'clock in the morning for the residents.
Do if you're smart.
Can you enter
So-
the clubhouse? Is there access from the pool to the restrooms if the clubhouse is closed?
Yes, ma'am, you see that door right there, the bump out on the right side, there, that door right there?
Okay.
All residents can use their RFID badge and have access to that to go straight back to the restrooms.
Okay.
I do know that we have access for that, and we've accounted for that.
And the pool facilities can be rented out to the tenants
No,
for
no one-
parties
Nope.
or for birthday parties?
No,
or-
it's a liability issue that the owner doesn't ever address and have to deal with insurance and all that. The pool can never be rented out. If you're a tenant, you can swim there, and that's about it.
This is kind of an off the question, but where are the showers for the pool?
So that's something that we were chatting with the State Health Department because they're the ones that permit the pool. And I was alerted to that new requirement last week. And so you see the building on the right that's the pool pump house. We're going to add one onto that.
Okay,
That's the current plan.
okay.
So yes, there will be a shower.
Any other questions? Mike Wilson, do you have anything that you want to comment on? I don't.
Come to the-
Fire department really didn't have any
Right.
minor issues. Obviously, the concern is, are the restrooms there enough for
Right.
people pool? The health department obviously doesn't want them going in the pool. They want them to have easy access to a bathroom, not have to travel back to their apartments.
Sure. Do I have any other questions, or is there a motion? From anyone?
Well, I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance.
I'll
Do I have a
second.
second? I have a motion and a second. Can we vote, please?
Okay. So Tommy had the first motion. Who was second?
Tommy and Trish?
Tricia? Trish? And if we can be clear on the motion, what are we
To
motioning
go
for?
ahead
Is it
and approve the
the requirement for
application.
restrooms to begin with for the outdoor area, or was there any further
It
details?
was to approve the variance as requested.
Okay. Ann Weber,
Aye.
Kyle Lombardo,
Aye.
Tricia Hadley,
Aye.
Jim McVerder,
Yes.
Ron Rokey,
Yes.
Tommy Willis,
Yes.
and Patrice Zimmerman.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes unanimously.
Thank you for your time.
Congratulations, you're
They gotta factor in where the kids actually use the bathroom.
So we have one last case.
I was a lifeguard for 3 summers.
gotta find it, I'm sorry. Is that it? Case number BOAB 2023-00003. The appeal of Deborah Deck, representing Independent School District Number 89 of Oklahoma City Public Schools, from a decision of the code official for noncompliance with Chapter 4, Section 423.4, and supplement of the International Building Code 2015 as adopted by the City of Oklahoma City pertaining to the requirement for storm shelter facilities for 500 Southwest Grand Boulevard. Would you care to read the staff analysis, please?
Okay. So the applicant's request pertains to the requirement for storm shelters to be provided at all new buildings or structures incorporating an educational E-use group under the IBC 2015 Section 423.4 as written in our supplement. This requirement also states that storm shelter facilities must be provided with capacity to house the combined occupant load of the students and faculty with which the proposed project encompasses, the add-on itself, or in this case, the new structures. The applicant has proposed the placement of 4 modular classroom structures to house students on campus, but had no initial plans for adding storm shelters at this immediate time. The applicant plans to provide storm shelters on site as a built-in element of future projects. The occupant load for the new classroom use group E occupancy is calculated according to the IBC table 1004.1.2 at 20 square feet per net per occupant. The applicant has proposed 1 structure for each location with 1,354 square feet of classroom space, which gives us a total occupant load of 67.7 apiece, with 270.8 combined. And the IBC 2015 Section 423.1 states that storm shelters are to be constructed in accordance with the ICC 500, which would require 1,364 square feet of storm shelter area for this combined occupant load. In addition, while the 2015 IBC code does allow for the permitting of temporary uses when approved by the code official, it has been the policy of Oklahoma City Plan Review to deny these requests, being that all building permits are seen as permanent once issued, and there is little to no means of enforcement triggered after a permit receives certificate of occupancy. The code official finds no language as listed in either the ICC 500 2014 nor the 2015 IBC, which interpret to allow for the applicant's request to defer the construction of storm shelters while pending the possible certification of existing facilities which they believe are shelters. The code official has allowed for the construction of the classrooms to begin while yet holding the certificate of occupancy pending the storm shelters having been installed.
So Heath, you're representing the applicant?
Yes, I am.
Would you state your name and address, please?
Heath Tate, 4000 Classen Boulevard, Suite 100 North, Oklahoma City. And so I am here in the role of bond consultant for Oklahoma City Schools. With me today, I've got Deborah Deck, the long-range facilities planner for Oklahoma City Schools, and Gary Jewell, Director of Operations, and George Knox, not Director of Operations. I was about to give him your job, Gary, but Project Manager under Operations as well. So kind of the approach today, obviously this is not a new issue that you've heard or dealt with in the past. So I want to kind of hit some high points. Most of this you've already seen in the documentation, but I want to give a chance to hear kind of our reasoning behind it and then answer any questions that you may have. So kind of the long story long, obviously last year in November, Oklahoma City Schools passed a bond resolution to basically do a lot of work around the district. One of the things that we didn't really anticipate going in, all of the demographic studies were showing, reduction of class sizes across the district. I do believe that in hindsight, the bond vote itself was enough to start getting enrollments higher, because we are starting to see higher enrollments at the schools. That's why we were a little caught off guard, and that's where the portable or the temporary buildings kind of come into play. So they are seeing an increase, a projected increase in August at Capitol Hill High School of over 200, just right at 200 students. I think 204 is technically what we're expecting. And we really have no place else to put them, so hence the need. From that, we knew going in that the storm shelter component was going to be an issue. We have no problem with the code itself. I think it's a very, valid and purposeful code that is necessary. So what we wanted to ask is kind of an understanding that we are building storm shelters. The problem is we are building storm shelters with the new school and not necessarily wanting to build storm shelters for temporary buildings that are really going to be removed once the construction of the new school is completed. We've provided site plans for you so you can kind of see the orientation of the new school with where the existing is now. Yeah, this is a great representation. The red outline is where Capitol Hill High School sits now. Right, actually, where the cursor is where the temporary buildings are being planned so that they have easy access, close access to the school itself. But the gray hatched area is where the new school will be built. So there's no relationship, like those will not be used once the new school comes online. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of how we got here. What our approach is many times when you hear this argument of let's not put in temporary shelters or shelters for temporary buildings, the concern is well, those temporary buildings aren't going away, that they become permanent. And in the past, there's been a history of that for, not denying that at all. In this case, I believe we can prove, that we are dedicated to removing these once the new Capitol Hill High School comes online. So kind of our thought is we have funding for the new school, and I keep saying new school, but I am meaning new shelters as well, that will house the entire population of the school. Planning is currently underway for that. We have turned in a preliminary set of plans for permitting. That's also part of your packet, just kind of our conceptual preliminary plans right now. We have a finish date. The new school will be completed by August of 2026, so that is 3 years away. And one of the thoughts also is that while we are asking for a variance, we are technically asking for a temporary variance, not a permanent variance in this case. One of the thoughts as we went through this is that, and I think it's important to note the staff analysis saying that, there's no way to enforce this. Well, we technically do have a way to enforce this. Now we can say that these temporary buildings have to be removed as part of the approval for the new Capitol Hill High School. So technically we can enforce that in this case. So kind of moving into, obviously the intent of the code is safety of the students. That's paramount for everybody. So the question then becomes, how are we going to maintain safety for the students? And that's where this plan, this is one of the options, and this is by no means the first line of defense. But, where the temporary buildings, I keep trying to say portables, where the temporary buildings will be located will have direct access to the current areas of refuge now. So these are, best available areas of refuge. You've probably heard that term before. We are not even trying to say that those are storm shelter areas, but it's where the school takes shelter when they are caught at the school. Now, the primary mode of handling severe weather days for Oklahoma City schools is to actually turn out school the day before. So when the weather forecast is showing that severe weather is imminent, and this is actually the case whether it's tornadoes or ice storms, they identify the pattern, like if it's going to come in the afternoon, the previous day they say we're going to go virtual. So they don't even have kids come to the school for a half day, they turn them out and plan to go virtual. Now, if the forecast is for later in the night, they'll go ahead and have school that day. But if the threat is during the day, they won't even bring kids to the school. And that's not just Capitol Hill, that's actually a district-wide. That's a district-wide decision. So that is kind of the idea behind how they take student safety seriously, because they know not all the schools have shelters, so that their approach is, let's first not put them in harm's way. Kind of our best available options. So I don't know how many of you are aware of this. There are several companies out there that offer portable storm shelters. Only one of them is actually ICC 500 compliant with this, with regard, that I found so far, with regard to the structural stability of the structure. But I want to key in on the structural part because they don't have restrooms, they don't have all of the other requirements that come with the ICC 500 compliance. So we went through, Vaughn Concrete Products is a company that we looked at. Their largest portable storm shelter is 34 person. So we're talking about 8 or 9, I think we actually were looking at maybe 8, 34 person shelters to hit the 240 occupants that are, code occupants. So to do that, to purchase them, get them on place, do the dirt work, do the utility work, everything that leads into making them fully ICC 500 compliant and prepping the site for it, we're well over $650,000. And I hesitate to say that because I think the number may be a little low, but that's kind of where we projected that number to be at from an estimating standpoint. So that really is not an option for the school district because when we passed the bond, the planning had already been set. We weren't expecting schools to grow right now. We were expecting them to grow once the new schools come online. And so we were caught a little off guard without the funding mechanism. So the only way to get funding from this project is to actually take it out of the high school that's being built. Oklahoma City has basically decided, Oklahoma City Schools, I should say, has basically decided that they can't do that. We're all aware of what construction prices are doing, so it kind of puts the school district in a bind to take away from a project that is one of the flagship projects for the city. And so what that means is we're looking at class sizes that are 27 or more per classroom. And if you know any teachers, that's a really large number to ask the teachers to control throughout the year. So that kind of led us again to where we're at today, asking for this variance. So kind of our approach is that we're taking student safety seriously. We understand the code, and we think it's a valid code and a really necessary code. Oklahoma City Schools has made an effort to get more storm shelters into the district. Where the numbers sit today, we have about 30 buildings that have storm shelters. Leaves us with 32 that don't. We're planning on taking 5 buildings offline through this bond process, and we're adding 12, which basically leaves us with 15 schools that will have to be addressed in the next bond cycle. When we did our assessments for the school district leading into this bond, we started that about a year and a half prior to the bond vote. And leading into that, it was projected that we needed about $2 billion to do everything. And obviously that wasn't possible. I don't think the city would have passed that bond vote. So really where we're at is we are dealing with a budget crunch. That is not your problem. Not trying to make it, just again trying to explain the situation. And so that's kind of what led us to where we're at today and why we're asking for the variance. I'm trying to give as complete a picture of how we got here as I can. So with that, any questions?
You said you looked into some temporary facilities,
Yes, we did.
and you only found one that was FCC?
ICC 500
ICC
compliant.
500
Yeah,
compliant.
we're working with KFC Engineering on a lot of those issues, and that in their research, that was the only one they found so far that is structurally compliant. Several of them have been tested, but they all list expired testing certificates and don't actually have current testing certificates for their shelters.
And it's been our experience, we've had trouble getting letters,
Yes.
current letters from them. We had another client, or not a client, but another applicant who
Yeah.
went through the same thing. And they were having trouble getting current
Yeah.
letters of compliance.
Yeah.
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, do those come with their own foundations and everything?
No, you have to create the
Right.
foundation system to anchor them down.
Where's the new school going to be built at?
Scott, if you don't mind, can we back up to the?
Yeah.
If you'll roll back to that other.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
There we
It's
go.
that area
Yeah.
there.
So the This plan right here shows the Spiegel Stadium, the County Health Department down in the bottom right corner. The gray area, the dark gray area with a hatch to it, that's where the new school is proposed. And then the red outline is where the existing school is. And then just to the right of that red outline is where the temporary buildings would be placed.
One of the concerns you had about the temporary buildings was meeting the full ICC 500, the restrooms and all the other issues.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, basically what they provide is essentially a concrete box with shelter doors. So we have to provide everything else that goes in it to make it fully ICC 500 compliant.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? Okay.
If you, it looks like you're maintaining the property lines, all of this is going to be still part of the school property.
Yes, ma'am.
If you built a shelter now, and would it not be used later on for a shelter or something else?
It would not be in this case. Ideally, what we would want to do is have the students where they don't have to travel outside to get to the shelters. We would prefer them to be able to stay within the existing school building or the new school building in order to access the shelters. And so if you'll bear with me, if you don't mind scrolling down, there's a plan shortly. Yeah, this plan right here. So this plan shows within the new school building where the storm shelters are planned, so that students have easy access to them. Part of the requirement for ICC 500 is that you've got to be within a 5-minute walking distance. Having it centrally located within the school helps us reduce that, and it helps us not have to take kids outside when severe weather is approaching.
So you said that you would phase this to where we could, basically make the demolition of these conditional.
Yes.
Have you guys thought about kind of walk me through the phasing of how that would happen? Because y'all, all these kids in this building, now you need to move them over into this building that doesn't have a CO in it yet. So there's going to have to be some sort of phasing that work. Have you guys thought that out through? Just in terms of how you're going to move the kids, and because you're saying that we'll demo these buildings before you give us a certificate of occupancy for the new school.
I'm sorry, so not a certificate of occupancy.
Okay.
So let's back up. So the way the phasing is going to have to work is we've got to build the new school while the kids are in the existing school. And over that summer is when all the teachers move. So the summer of 26 is when all the teachers would move into the new building. At that point, I guess to answer your question, yes, we could make it conditional where we can't take occupancy while those temporary buildings are there. We could make that happen because it is, we are on the track to open the building in August of 26. So yeah, we would need that certificate of occupancy before August of 26. So yeah, we can do that. Sorry, I had to think through that for a second.
I guess what I'm trying to make sure of is that the city has enough teeth that this could actually work if that was an option.
Yeah, I mean, we can put a conditional hold on the CO for any number of reasons.
So the time frame you're really asking for is now till August of 2026.
Yeah, we would be talking about August of 24 to August of 26.
2 years.
3 years.
Sorry, 23.
Oh, yeah.
It's not
3
24 yet. The years just go by way
Yeah.
too fast.
I'm jumping ahead too.
But yeah, August of 23 to August of 26 is the time frame.
3-year period. Is anybody from the school here that can explain the process by which you close the schools on notice of inclement weather? I mean, is there a written policy somewhere?
There is actually a written policy. We probably should have provided that, but it is in the letter from Dr. McDaniel. He's explaining their policy, and yes, that is standard policy for them.
So this,
And
this coming fall, go ahead.
I apologize. Let me just jump in right quick to further answer your question. We do have record of them doing this in the past, and that may have been, let me see. I don't remember if that was actually part of the letter or the documentation provided, but we do have records of when they've closed the school in the past due to inclement weather, and we can provide that readily. Yeah, actually, one of the attachments to the letter, if you'll scroll down, I see, never mind, you're already getting there. Yeah, so this is the days in the past when they've closed school early. Most of these, being honest, are for ice days. But a few of these, the ones that stretch into late March and I don't know, there's no April dates, but some of the late March, they're under 19 to 20. The April days, that was due to severe weather as well.
But a policy, you don't have a policy letter in place stating how you will, under what conditions you will?
I believe we do, and I can provide that.
Okay.
So have the bonds for this project already been sold and committed to, or is there a chance that cost overruns on other projects could cause a delay to where this project gets pushed back a year or more?
Okay, so that, I'll explain and answer that. It's going to take a second because it's complicated. But the ultimate answer is yes, all of that is in place so that these will happen. That is guaranteed. That it'll get done and it'll get built on time. So bonds are being sold incrementally. So every year the school district sells bonds to cover basically the expected costs for that year. And they do that because they get better sales prices when they do that. So the first round of bonds have been sold already. As far as guarantee for this project, part of the bond resolution that was voted on allocated money for Capitol Hill High School. We're not allowed to actually take that money away or use it for another project until that school is built. If we happen to get the school built and we have any money left over, then it can be shifted to another project, but it is not allowed to be shifted because it's been identified for that. So legally, we are required to build this school and build the storm shelters, and then Dr. McDaniel's holding us all to the August of 26. So we have to answer to him for that.
Okay.
So the 3-year period for these additional temporary classrooms is the 4 classrooms or buildings that you need, all of them are going to be required this school year, or is that for the next 2 years also?
That is, so the way we know that we need it now is you have some early enrollment, and then the internal demographics group called the PRE group does the projections of, based on that and based on history, what the enrollment is expected to be in August. And so that enrollment is expected to be for August of 23. Can't really project what August of 24 is going to look like yet, but we do fully expect that if this trend continues, that we will need them for the next 2 years as well.
Or you could need additional classrooms, if you're saying you're going to use all of them for this 23-24 year, and you didn't anticipate that last year, that you could also need 4 more next year and the following year after that. I'm just
hypothetically, there is that potential. Secretly, we hope that doesn't happen, but there is that potential always. At which point we would have to come back for another discussion of that. Because right now, all we're asking for is for the eight classrooms, four buildings, 8 classrooms total right now.
So what's your fallback plan should this appeal not be granted?
Right now, the only thing that we can do, because we do not have the money to allocate it for the reasons that I explained on the resolution, we don't have the money to allocate to this school. So the only thing we can do is to pack the kids into the existing building as it is. So that's what takes our classroom sizes to 27 or up. That would be average class size. We typically have classrooms that are have more students than that. So. And I'm sure I don't have to tell you this, but when the classes get that large, it becomes really hard to teach and instruct students.
So is there any plans to come up with alternates to this alternate plan? I mean, I'm not in education, but
Sure.
I mean, I was a product of split sessions and moving people from schools to schools, and actually that's what I think Mustang had to do on one of our other
Right.
cases. So is there any plans to come up with?
The only thing, again, that is possible is to try to move students around the district. We've got all the schools on the south side have, they're not at capacity, but we would have to basically split these kids up and move them around the district, and that is an unpopular choice for the families living in this district.
I guess the plan you had that shows the areas in blue where they shelter in place.
Yeah. So this is the plan for the new high school.
I'm sorry, no, the other one that shows the
Oh, scroll up.
the existing school.
Oh, there it is. Yes.
Yes, where they shelter in place.
Yes. So those areas have been identified through previous structural assessment as the best available areas of refuge. Now that is different from a storm shelter. It wasn't just. You may already know this, and so I'm not trying to act like a know-it-all, I promise. But those are not storm shelters, and I want to be clear about that. These are just within the building. These are the safest spaces within that building.
And so does that square footage accommodate these additional 200, whatever number of children that you are planning to bring to the school?
It does, yeah. We're only showing the main high school where these buildings are placed next to both the field house and there's a career tech CTE building is what we call it. There's a CTE building that is adjacent to this main building. All of them have best areas of refuge, but yes, we have more than enough areas of refuge to take on these additional 200 students.
Yeah, more than enough areas of refuge that don't actually qualify
As storm
as a
shelters.
storm shelter.
Yeah, and we're not asking them to be, seen as storm shelters in your eyes. It's just letting you know that's where students take refuge now. But again, primarily the idea is that we're not going to have school on the days where we have that's our primary method of keeping students out of harm's way, is not to have them in the building when severe weather is predicted. Does that answer your question, or?
Yes, I mean, obviously we're concerned about the safety of the students, and
Right.
I understand you have a commitment to get rid of these buildings, but it's 3 years that we have these buildings in place, so that's.
Right.
Yeah.
How many students again in those 4 temporaries?
200. 240 code applied. We're actually trying to get 200 in, so.
And that's into how many classrooms?
8 total classrooms, 2 classrooms per building, so 4 buildings. If you're doing the math, it breaks down to about 22,
25.
24 students per classroom.
Did the portable storm shelter people tell you how quickly they could get any set for you if you had to?
Yes, they did. We would be looking at November at the earliest.
I mean, is there any way they could get, because if you have 200, if you're anticipating 200 kids, whatever, divided by 34, you can get into there, so you'll need like 5.5, 6.
8.
6 of those. Well, if you do 200 kids,
Well, 200, but by application of code, it's 240 is what we have to account for, so.
And what square footage per person is that based on? The 5?
Well, we base everything off the occupant load under the IBC. That's 1 per 20 for the
1 per
classroom
20.
space.
Okay.
And that's, of course, regardless of how many are enrolled, you know, it takes into account that more
But the square footage of
The
of
shelter would be 1 to
is
5.
1 to 5.
Yeah, but there is a requirement for a 20 square foot space for the handicapped, 1 for every 200, I
Yeah.
believe it is.
But if they could get a couple of them, so that maybe the first part of the year, you have to double up, but if you only have, 150 or 100 show up, they could be in the portable buildings, and they wouldn't have to assimilate, the teachers wouldn't have to assimilate 28 in their classrooms, they could maybe do 24 or something. I understand that because I work with kids all the time, and, anytime you have over 20, I think, in a classroom, you're asking for trouble. But we also, as a committee here, we have to be very aware of the safety factors, and that's what we're voting on here is the interpretation of the code and of the dangers involved with not following that.
As you know, this board has no ability to change the code.
Right.
We can look at equivalencies if the AHJ, is in favor of letting you present the equivalencies. We can certainly look at equivalencies.
Yeah.
But when it comes to making exceptions or changing the code, it's out of our purview.
Okay.
As much as we'd like to sometimes. But is there any monetary places you could get part of the money to get some of the shelters here before the start of the second part of the year and look at that aspect? Because and this is just my opinion. I mean, right now I would vote against it just because it's not. 3 years is a long time to have an extension on anything. Usually it's 18, and we usually try to get it within a year or even 6 or 8 months at the most. By November, you wouldn't anticipate any bad weather until the spring, so that gives it time to get it before that would come. But this is just my personal opinion on the thing, so everybody else may have a different one.
I'm just asking a code question. This may be more for Scott, but if we treat this as part of the construction for Capitol Hill High School, does that allow us the ability to have temporary buildings while the new school is being built? Because sometimes when we're doing phasing, we'll have to get into that where we've got to displace students temporarily while the new school is being built, and typically in that scenario, temporary buildings are used for that, and then they're required to come off-site.
I mean, it is possible, but I think we still run into the same issue of, of extending that temporary occupancy out.
Sure.
I mean, yeah, I don't think we'd ever be against that, of course, but it's the timeline is the problem. So,
sure,
making sure we have the storm shelters.
Yeah, and one of Kyle, your comment about not changing code, I fully understand that. One of the thoughts was that this is a rare opportunity where we actually have the funding, the planning, legally we're required to do this and provide storm shelters. Like, all of the things are there, so I can absolutely guarantee you storm shelters will be provided. It's just going to take us 3 years to get there.
I guess you mentioned that a possible option is to redistrict or, to have the kids go to a different school, but it didn't sound like you've looked at that. It would be nice to know if that's a possibility or not.
Redistricting can't be done before the start of the school year, so redistricting for this year is not an option. They do have the ability to, basically move kids around, but that has met with really stringently strong opposition within this community. So, because we can't force kids to go to a different school. The code occupancy for Capitol Hill High School is technically 1,820. We're going to be under that this year. Enrollment is expected to be at 1,477 for this coming school year, which is 200 more than what we had last year, roughly 200 more than what we had last year. And so, we can cram them in. That's not necessarily the problem. The problem is code occupancy and actual occupancy for effective education are different numbers. And that's why, again, that pushes our class sizes to 27 or more.
Say the total occupancy again. What?
Code occupancy is set at 1,820 for the entire school.
And you have how many?
1,477 is what's projected. But again, that occupancy assumes 20 square feet per student, and you can't actually get that many kids in the schools and teach effectively.
Scott, have you ever been given a scenario where some of the square footage requirements on the temporary shelters were relieved, like the toilet, for example, and refrigerator, and things like that, and possibly even looking at the square footage per occupant? Has anybody ever brought you something like that that would allow an effective way to provide shelters for these temporary classrooms that would, be in a way that it would be more amenable to the people required to provide the shelter? Have you ever had any, when we were working on the other cases, did they bring you anything like that, where they talked about not having the toilet and the...
I think one of our prior cases made the argument that being that they were children, they would take up less space, so they were looking to, design the storm shelter based on the 1 per 3 square foot occupancy. I don't recall if we approved anything with that. I don't think we did, but otherwise, yeah, I don't think I've had anything brought to us. And right now, of course, we're currently under the 2015 codes. Under the 2018, which again, we're yet to be adopted. There will be some better leniency there when it comes to the restrooms to allow for chemical toilets, things like that, that'll allow, extra room, as long as you provide the everyday restroom fixtures elsewhere. But, again, that just hadn't been passed yet regardless, so we just can't use that. But, so I hope that answers your question. I don't recall any other scenario. So.
Yeah, and in Scott's defense, the way the code reads now, it calls out safe room, which is a legal, as you know, it's a legal requirement for, like, the term safe room means you have to meet all of the ICC 500 requirements. So probably don't have the option of that would be my assumption.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I did some research on and put in safe rooms inside the classrooms for usage in shooting issues and storm issues. My question here is, there are many safe rooms that are rated, for houses, inside garages, that don't have to be outside facilities. They don't have to have restrooms. They don't have to have anything. You go in for 15 minutes and you come back out. Mm-hmm. My question is, has that ever been addressed in the ICC where, these shelters, my sister built her shelter inside her garage, that concrete, all of the stuff that it would take. I guess I'm missing the point where the ICC requirements, are there for the restrooms and stuff, but you're not there. This isn't hurricane. This is a tornado alley where you're in a shelter for maybe 15 minutes, maybe 30 minutes even.
And if I may answer that to some degree, The argument, of course, that we are in Tornado Alley rather than a hurricane zone.
Right.
That is one of the reasons why the Building Code Commission is looking at, providing these additional allowances in the 2018 codes when we do adopt them. But, again, we just haven't been able to get that done yet.
Yeah.
I've been told that 2021 is going to actually go a little further than.
It may, yeah. And then as far as as far as the argument goes about, retrofitting an existing room or doing, building an above-ground shelter inside, similar to what you do in a garage or putting something in the floor. I mean, those are options, but again, it also costs, of course, the time, the money. Most of them will take a structural engineer required to sign off that it does meet the ICC 500 for all those impact loads and wind
Right.
resistance and all that. So there may be 1,000 ways to do it out there, depending on the materials you want to use, but it still comes down to that being an engineered structure.
Right. So if you took one of these best area of refuge and you had an engineer refit that area, you wouldn't have to have restrooms because you already have restrooms in the building, right? So as long as that area was retrofitted to be structurally sound during a tornado event, why couldn't they do something like that versus there wouldn't be any need for restrooms? Because there's restrooms in the building.
And
Yeah.
One of your examples with the garage shelter, residential and commercial requirements are different.
Right.
But any shelter in a commercial building will have to have access to the restrooms inside the shelter area.
That's where the code reads.
Okay.
Currently, the code still sees these as hurricane as well, and that's a requirement for the restrooms. We
Okay.
can't get out of that at the moment.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know if you were willing to work with the city to see if there's some things that might come back to us as reductions to those requirements so that we can accommodate the shelters for the 3-year period. That would be, wouldn't be a $600,000 hit or, it's, waiting in a shelter for 15 minutes to a half hour on the days that the F1s and the F2s come up suddenly, not when you already know there's going to be inclement weather, you're going to close the schools. Those are really the periods we're talking about here. Mike, do you have anything that you want to add?
No. Yeah, I wanted to mention that this was all brought up at the state when they adopted this standard. And we pushed to maybe make it just that the building met the structural requirements of 423, not the sanitation and ventilation, because we realized where we are, it's just you're not in there that long. Well, they didn't do that, and as a city, we're not allowed to adopt a standard that's less restrictive than the state, so we were stuck with adopting what the state did on storm shelters. Part of the big problem, obviously, we would normally we do it for a few months, not 3 or 4 years, as this will probably be. And so it's just a lot bigger issue in this case. But there are options that they can still try to pursue to do something different. But other than that, there's really not a fire issue because they're detached structures.
One of the things I was looking at on your dates closed for inclement weather, most of those days were for, I would say, weren't for severe weather.
correct, yeah. And that, I mentioned that earlier, most of these days were actually for ice storms. The late March and in 19 and 20, you'll see some late March and April days, where that was COVID, never mind. We have not had to close the schools for inclement weather since 17, 18, but that is their policy, so.
When does school let out?
1st of May. Let me see, I don't know if it says it on there, but it's usually that second week of May, I think, is usually when it lets out.
So by the 15th of May.
20th is the May 8th.
Oh, there you go, yeah, well, and that was the May 8th and 19 and 20, that was just because of COVID, that's why that one was listed separately. But normally you're looking at that, yeah, about that second week of May, somewhere in there.
So, and I'm just thinking outside the box here. You assume you have some kind of policy letter somewhere about shutting down for inclement days.
Yes.
If you had a policy letter that stated a percentage, like if we have a 30% chance of inclement weather on this day, we will go online. End of story.
Yes, we can,
You know,
go ahead.
would that be something we could consider as an option? If it was 30%, a 30% or greater chance of inclement weather, school will be automatically moved to online.
So would you state your name,
Yes,
please?
I'm Deborah Deck. I'm the Executive Director of Bond and Capital Projects for the Oklahoma City Public Schools. Just want to give a little bit of clarity on the policy. Our board had gave Dr. McDaniel the authority to make the decisions about closing because of weather. So these ones he had done for ICE, we had the COVID ones, but what they do is they do the weather center, they meet with them, normally it's around 11, that they follow that. If it's on medium or high, they just decide to go ahead and shut down. So that is kind of a percentage. It's not established percentage, but it's based on the weather forecast. So, and it is an automatic close.
See, but in these dates, it doesn't really demonstrate that for inclement weather during tornado season. I don't see any Mays. I don't see any Aprils where we've had tornado warnings and the school was still in session.
Right, because if it is during day, then they will close down. But if it's at night or after school, like recently this year, we have one that was on the afternoon, so we shut down after school activities. So everything after school activities gets shut down. You don't see those in there because instruction is happening, but anything after the students are released at 4 o'clock, we just cancel everything afterwards. The other thing that I want to touch is something here right now. You mentioned about redistricting and moving the students from one school to the other. Obviously, like Heath mentioned, we are too late to do that for this school year. There is a possibility that we can start preparing for the next school year. One of the things that is part of the bond is on the south side, our next schools will be U.S. Grant and Northwest Classen. Both of those schools are getting shelter additions. So the same process for August of 2026 is the thing is happening as well. So we will have the same issue. Just like in this school right now, we are talking about providing shelter for about 240 students because of the code, but the other 1,200 students at Capitol Hill High School don't have a shelter.
Right.
So, and if we start thinking about putting the shelters for 15, 20 minutes inside the school, then it's not only for those 240 students, it will be for the 1,400 students.
And we totally
So,
agree with you. We
but
totally see
We
that.
are willing to work with the city and see what we can do, but this is our best effort on the instructional part. So we're trying to do our best to provide the best instruction, because that's pretty much what we are here for as the Oklahoma Public City Schools. So in order to keep the students at a smaller amount, we would like to have those portables outside. One of the questions was, what happens if next year there's a 200 projection? Then at that point, we can go ahead, because the board has to get involved. Then we need to do all the demographic analysis. It will take anywhere from 6 to 8 months to do that. Plus, if we redistrict, we already told the families on the Capitol Hill, you are getting this new building. So if we redistrict, they may end up at U.S. Grant, or they may end up at Northwest Classen. They're only getting classroom additions. So what they voted for, to have a new school in their communities, they won't be taking part of.
Ms. Miles, you have something to add?
Good afternoon. I'm sorry if I'm not following the correct protocol. My name is Krista Miles. I am the Assistant Director for Development Services. I've been in the meetings with Mr. Wise as well as with Mr. Kyle in regards to the school system. I wanted to take the opportunity to say that it is the utmost importance of development services to make sure that we are making sure that our children and our citizens in Oklahoma are safe. That is our ultimate goal and objective, to make sure that properties are constructed to code. We did have these conversations and we offered solutions and suggestions on how we could work with them. But what I'm hearing is there is no definite way that a school district can say we're not going to have school today because of an act of God. If we get a tornado or a hurricane that comes through here in an hour, how are they going to be prepared to make sure that our children or our family members are safe? So we did consider that when we were in discussion with them. Again, there are alternative solutions, like you were stating earlier, talking about the safe rooms. The intent of safe rooms versus hurricanes and tornadoes is that hurricanes, you will be in a structure a little longer. Which are tornadoes, I believe you brought up maybe 15 minutes to 2 hours in these type of structures. So I, believe that we want to work with them and develop a partnership, but there are many variables involved. They're asking for an exception for an extended amount of time, and it places a burden on the city as well as our staff and our licenses that will be at stake if an act of God would happen. So, again, my apologies, but I felt that this needs to be stated. I understand that it may cause some type of inconvenience as far as construction, but again, we took an oath and we have licenses and ethics that say we have to make sure that we are ensuring that the citizens are taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, we probably should have started with the fact that we've got other schools that have been denied this. And I mean for 6 months and not 3 years. I mean, in all fairness to Oklahoma City Public Schools. So my question is, do we go back and tell these other schools now they can do this? They all figured their other options so that they could have their school year. If the best interest is in the children, then it's about storm shelters. Every architect, every engineer, every municipality in Oklahoma knows about these regulations that have been in place. And it puts us, in my opinion, in a risk situation on behalf of the city, on behalf of ourselves, when we don't follow through with, like we did on the very first case. We've approved along that railroad line these other people that have come before for those other buildings. And basically, that's almost a rubber stamp thing. This, in my opinion, is a rubber stamp against it, as Ron said, because it's too big a liability. 3 years away. You don't even have the dates on here of actual tornadoes. I don't even think you have the date of the tornado that 3 people died in not too long ago. And so I think there's a lot of research that needs to be done with your higher education people, and I think there are options, because there's been busing programs and everything else. I'm a product of that from 1970. So I think there's always options, and that you just have to put your mind to it. And what was recommended a while ago, we recommended to other school systems, these are simple to build, and they're not even a tenth of the cost is what they're quoting you for these move-in storm shelters. You can go onto FEMA online and see there's steel rooms that you can fabricate, and go to the Home Builders Association and some of these people and see if they would help, utilize some of these things to help you be able to accommodate. But my biggest problem is, what do we do about everybody that's been denied?
I guess in all fairness, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but the ones that have been denied, They put the temporary shelter there, and they were just requesting an extension for the shelter, right? And there was no plans to build another high school with the shelters in it. So in all fairness to you, I think, to me, that's what's the difference, that is the difference of this case than maybe with the other ones that we've looked at.
Correct.
So,
You're right, but we didn't approve them.
but we didn't approve, we gave them an
didn't approve
extension. We did give them an
And they
extension for
still-
several months.
They still didn't make it, and so
Yeah, so.
they kept coming back, so.
And so, just so I'm clear, right now, if this does not get passed, you're just going to end up putting the kids in the school anyway, right? They're just going to be bigger classrooms. So, in effect, really the only people are getting hurt are the kids. So, I mean, it's no fair to them.
And the teachers. And
I'm really
the
trying to
administrators.
digest this problem that you've got, because it's a very difficult one, and it doesn't do anybody any justice, and it's very unfair to the kids. So that's where I'm at right now.
I also know the state is struggling with the same issue,
Yes.
and it's something that I'm sure is going to be brought up in the next session of the state's version of the adopting new codes.
Right.
Any other comments? Anything from the city? Do I have a motion?
I'll be the bad guy. I make a motion that we deny the request.
Do I hear a second? Okay.
That's good.
I'll second.
So Ron and Jim.
Okay, Ron and Jim.
So this is a vote on denial. Can I ask you, turn off one of those speakers. Can I ask you, should we offer an option to continue before we deny, so that in case they do want to investigate something that might be, applicable in this case, that gives them time to do that?
You have to vote first, because the motion.
Right, I understand that, but okay. Or we can,
Yeah.
you can withdraw.
Just wait to see what Scott says.
I mean, I see no harm in continuing it for sure,
I don't know,
to give them an
maybe-
option, but
Maybe we should ask the applicant if they're interested in continuance. You would be interested?
Then I will withdraw my
Motion?
motion to deny this.
Are you willing to withdraw your second?
I don't want to. Go ahead.
You don't have to.
This doesn't make sense to me.
That I would say we continue it, that we.
You want to make a motion to
Motion
continue?
to continue this case.
Any seconds?
I'll second.
is that Tom? Yeah. To continue, okay.
Also say, if we're going to do a continuance, we need to have a reason for continuing. That the applicants bring options to us. That's, one of the things where we have approved extensions is because we had options for 3 months or something. Just to come back and for us to say the same thing, I don't see any sense in that. But I think what we're saying is we're willing to hear options, if you're willing to bring us options.
And, the reason for not denying is it gives you some options. You can also work with the city to come up with an amenable plan, something you're all in agreement with, and you don't even have to come back before this board.
We are absolutely interested in looking at all options that are available. There's nothing that's off the table as far as, but we are in a little bit of a bind from a time standpoint, as I'm sure you can understand, because the next board meeting will be in August, and we'll be up against the wall at that point on making a decision for the coming year. We're absolutely interested in working with the city. We've had meetings with them already, which kind of led us to this point. But we'll continue that discussion happily, just to try to find a resolution that we can work through, so.
Just had just wondering, you may go back to your architect and talk about, I don't know if this is something that would be willing to consider.
I am. so,
Okay, so, we're talking about plans and
Yeah.
optional plans. I know you have this new facility, so maybe there could be a plan to build those shelters first as part of the construction project, right? And then have you thought about maybe something like that? And then it reduces that, they'd have to be amenable to the city, but it reduces that 3-year timeline possibly to make it more palatable.
We can certainly look at that as an option, see if that's possible. We'll just give you an idea of where we're at from a long-range standpoint on project development and bidding. So we've submitted to the city and have initial plans that we're kind of opening this discussion here. And we are on the schedule to have the plans ready to go out to bid early next year for the entire school. And so what we're doing, if we are to create a separate building that is going to be a shelter space that could be part of the new school building, if we were to do that, that would probably get built and we would still be a year out. It wouldn't affect the 23-24 school year, and we would be into the 24-26 school year before it could even potentially be open. So at that point, we're a year and a half away from the rest of the school being complete anyway. So that's just like long-range thinking. But again, we will explore every option. It's just trying to get to August and what we're going to do there for the 20.
So we had a motion to continue.
Mhm.
We had a second. Tommy?
And a second, yes.
Second.
So can we have a vote, please?
Okay. So the vote is for a motion to continue this case. Ann Weber? Kyle Lombardo?
Aye.
Tricia Hadley?
Aye.
Jim McWhirter? Ron Roque?
Aye.
Tommy Willis?
Aye.
Patrice Zimmerman?
Aye.
Okay, the vote is 6-1, the vote passes.
Your case is continued.
Yes, it's continued to the next meeting. Okay, yes, sorry about that. So the case has been continued to the next meeting.
So do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Jim? Any second?
Second.
Ron?
Okay. Motion to adjourn, and Weber?
I second.
Oh, aye.
Aye.
Kyle Lombardo, aye, right. Tricia Hadley?
Aye.
Jim McWhirter?
Yes.
Ron Roque?
Yes.
Tommy Willis?
Yes.
And Patrice Zimmerman? Okay, motion passes to adjourn.